This is the mid-season 23 rocket launcher damage and DPS test. The mid-season patch is live and with it comes a long overdue shake-up to the heavy weapon sandbox. Let's find out what the new changes are and how they affect the current meta. Or are they even? The most important change and the one that affects 15 out of 30 rocket launchers is the new ammo economy. More specifically, all legendary high impact and precision frames along with 4 exotic got their ammo reserves increased by 2. Notable mentions are Palmyra Bee, Dragon's Breath and Galahorn that now have a maximum ammo capacity of 12 with 3 reserve mods equipped. And on the other hand, Semiotician, Braytech Osprey, Deathbringer and Truth with 11 rockets from previously 9. Those that can roll field prep and haven't reached the hard limit, which is 12 for high impact and precision and 10 for adaptive and aggressive, have their reserves increased by an additional 1. This means that, for example, on Code Duelo, which can reach the cap without the perk, it doesn't get an additional rocket and rather a passive reserve mod effect. Bipod, as expected, also got its ammo capacity increased by 2 and now has a limit of 17 on high impact frames, whereas on adaptive and aggressive remain the same with 15 ammo maximum. Enough with the ammo, it's time for the damage numbers. The second change is that precision frames got a 5% damage increase, which isn't much, but at least now they are getting closer to the competition. This next change didn't seem important at first, but it's actually the one that had the most implications. The high impact frames got their explosion damage increased to 90% of the total damage from previously approximately 78% and their impact damage decreased to 10% from previously 22%. Although Bungie wanted to keep the damage difference the same, they gave high impact frames a base 1% damage increase, which in turn, compared to the adaptive and aggressive frame, decreases the base damage difference to 8.7% down from 10% and increases the difference between high impact and precision frames to 6.1% from 5%. This isn't to be considered very important though, because when we apply the impact casing magazine perk, which provides a 10% increase to impact damage, the damage difference balances out. It's just funny that the whole archetype got balanced around the impact casing and Bungie considers it to be the standard magazine perk. Now that we know the basic changes, let's shift focus onto the exotics. Although they mentioned that the changes to the ammo economy and high impact frame damage ratio will be applied to Galahorn, Deathbringer and Truth, they forgot to mention Dragon's Breath. And guess what? None of these use impact casing as their magazine perk, so all of them got a huge 1% damage buff, or they would have if the game wasn't spaghetti. Unfortunately, Deathbringer's damage remains exactly the same because of only having impact damage from its exotic trait. Dragon's Breath is an outlier though, because the explosion damage is based on the fuel charge each rocket has. This results in lower fuel doing less damage, which triggered my curiosity. Upon further inspection, it seems that Dragon's Breath and Truth share a connection. They have the same exact impact damage, and Dragon's Breath explosion damage is based on a percentage reduction from that of Truth's. Minus 10% at Fuel X5, minus 20% at Fuel X3, and minus 30% at Fuel X1. And as a result of the ratio of the explosion damage increasing, the reduction is getting higher even though the percentage is the same. Now, a weapon that wasn't affected by this patch but got a huge nerf back, if I remember correctly, in Season 22 is Two-Tailed Fox. Back in my Season 21 testing, I noticed that although intrinsically a void weapon, is the only one that can benefit from all 3 Arc, Solar and Void Surge mods, and was also back then able to simultaneously benefit from 2 different weapon surge mods for a combined 28.7% damage increase instead of the normal 22% with 3 mods equipped, which I guess was a bug and they tried to fix it. Now, since each rocket fired changes the element of the weapon from Void to Solar to Arc, and upon reloading the weapon it becomes Void again, this results in the rockets being able to benefit only from the surge element when the magazine is empty, which is arc, and the ignition that is being triggered every other volley benefiting from void, assuming you are reloading instantly and not delaying. Since I mentioned reloading, when the magazine can be reloaded, the weapon element is also arc, assuming of course that you fired before emptying the magazine. This also means that it can only benefit from the arc reload mode. Another change is that now the Catalyst's third tail rocket is being fired independently from previously fired along with the second rocket, and as a result, this adds extra time to the firing animation, which in turn reduces the DPS. To sum up the exotics, overall Deathbringer tops the damage bar but can only be used effectively in under specific circumstances. For example, the boss stands on a fixed location during damage, like the Templar from Vault of Glass. Galahorn got even better with its increased ammo capacity, especially if you want to use it for ad clear, and the newest addition, Dragon's Breath, is a good option for solo damage, although the number you see is damage while rocket dumping and not used in a damage rotation in order to take advantage of its damage over time and auto-loading capabilities. Finally, the time has come for the legendary high impact and precision frame damage perks. The main problem with high impact and precision frames is that they don't roll with high damage perks, like bait and switch or surrounded. The highest damage perk they can roll with is Explosive Light, which although it provides a considerable 25% damage increase, it has two big problems. The first is that it doesn't buff Wolfpack rounds, and the second is that you need to proactively stockpile Orbs of Power to pick up during damage in order to have the damage buff active for all ammo. And since you preemptively stack up to 6 or 7 with Enhanced, you would require 6 to 5 orbs depending on the weapon's ammo economy, which pretty much means that you need a fire team in order for them to activate the super to create some, preferably well warlocks, bubble titans and goldie hunters. Otherwise, the total damage buff is reduced to around 50 to 20% depending on the weapon's maximum ammo capacity. This means that if you are in a fire team and you have Wolfpack rounds active, a rocket with Frenzy will on average deal 4% more damage than the Explosive Light without all its ammo buffed, whereas the Explosive Light with all ammo buffed will also result in an average 4% damage increase, and this is because Frenzy also provides the 50% damage buff to Wolfpack rounds. The second highest damage perk and the one that actually tops the damage board is Lasting Impression. The problem with this perk is that it adds a 3-second delay to the explosion damage, which lowers the DPS and may potentially hit immune in small duration damage phases. With the changes to high impact frames, it now provides an overall 22% damage increase thanks to the increased explosion damage ratio instead of the 90% on other frames, because the perk increases only the explosion damage by 25%. The good news is that the explosion damage buff gets applied to Wolfpack rounds as well. This makes Lasting Impression achieve the highest total damage with 5% more damage compared to Frenzy. The last somewhat of a damage perk that only high impacts currently roll with is, you guessed it, Bipod. This copium of a damage perk is not good for damage and certainly not good for DPS. It wasn't before the update and is far worse now. The 25% damage decrease means that every 4 Bipod rockets fired equal in damage to 3 normal, non-buffed rockets. Since the new ammo limit for high impact frames is 16 to 17, that damage is equal to 12 to 12 and 3/4 normal non-buffed rockets. Considering that the normal ammo capacity is 11 to 12, this translates to a 9% to 6% damage increase. In other words, it's worse than Vorpal's 10% damage increase, and for it to be closer to its previous 50% level like Frenzy, it would require Bungie to further increase its ammo capacity by at least 1 or even better 2. Not to dive into math equations, but the higher the base ammo capacity, it requires even more ammo to be around the 50% buff range. I dislike this perk. Now that we covered all the damage perks from high impact and precision frames, there is one final question that needs to be answered. How do they now rank compared to adaptive and aggressive frames? Bait and Switch, one of the meta perks to use, was also affected by this patch and now provides a 30% damage increase, down from 35%. This results in the perk when used from Cold Comfort, which is the only weapon with 10 ammo that can roll it, do 6% less damage compared to a high impact 12 ammo frame with explosive light. On the other hand, when used on Apex Predator, a 9 max ammo capacity rocket, it does 50% less damage compared to the high impact 12 ammo frame with explosive light, 12% less damage compared to the precision counterpart, 8% less compared to a high impact 11 ammo explosive light roll, and interestingly enough, 6% less damage to an adaptive or aggressive with 10 ammo. The highest damage perk is Surrounded, but it's very situational since it isn't easy to be active during most of the damage phases. On Crack's Termination, it does the third highest damage than any other rocket combination, with the 12 ammo high impact frame with lasting impression doing less than 1% more damage. When rolled on Apex Predator though, it does 9.5% less damage compared to an explosive light high impact 12 ammo frame and 10.6% less to one with lasting impression. Since Apex Predator is a craftable weapon, Surrounded can be enhanced with an increase to its damage effectiveness and therefore reducing the damage difference to 6.5% when compared to the high impact 12 ammo explosive light and 7.5% to the lasting impression. These differences may not seem negligible, and so to have a better understanding we need to check the DPS of each of the highest damage rocket perk combinations. If we consider the benchmark to be Deathbringer, which is the highest damage rocket, then it's fair to say that Apex Predator, Cold Comfort, Crack's Termination, Hazen Vengeance, and now Braytech Osprey are the main contenders for the best rocket title. Fortunately, I will say, there is not a clear winner, although I would personally consider Cracks to be the most goated since it's a world drop that you can farm while running Legend and Master Lost Sectors. I would definitely still consider Apex to be one of the best as well, because it can also roll with Reconstruction and Surrounded, but additionally can get bait and switch, and on top of that, it's craftable. The only downside for some may be the fact that you need to raid in order to acquire it, although to be fair, farming Kali isn't that big of a deal in my opinion. Cold Comfort is definitely a great rocket as well, my only dissatisfaction with it is that it's stasis, compared to the other two that are Arc and Solar respectively. It's definitely one of the go-to solutions if you are to rocket dump during a damage phase because of it being able to roll Envious Assassin and having the Restoration Ritual Origin trait. Braytech is a very interesting weapon since it rolls on the third column Cluster Bomb, and I know it sounds funny, but it's the only rocket that can have two damage perks active at the same time if we consider Cluster Bomb to be one. In my testing, I noticed that it also benefits from the fourth column damage perk. Unfortunately though, this isn't currently included on the list. And with that, the Season 23 rocket launcher test comes to an end. Stay tuned for the grenade launcher, sword, and probably linear and machine gun in the coming days or probably weeks. If you are interested in further technical details on how I calculated and performed these tests, you can check the video description. As always, I hope you enjoyed this one and learned something new from it. Thank you very much for watching and consider subscribing for more. CptZepos, signing out.